hold a judicial seat in the Family Division of the 30th Circuit Court in Ingham County. I would like to welcome Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist to our Family Center. Also, I'd like to recognize some special guests in attendance today. Justice Beth Clement, my colleague, Judge Carol Koenig, Representative Sarah Whitmer, and Senator Sylvia Santana. Also, Ingham County Commissioners Brian Crenshaw and Mark Polsdofer. And lastly, Nayeli Castanon-Velasquez and Marissa Cole, alumni from our Ingham Academy, which is part of our Ingham County Family Center. Our Family Center started with a big, bold idea because we wanted to expand and enhance community-based treatment, intervention, and prevention programs for our courts and our at-risk youth. With the assistance of our partners to include Michigan State University, Ingham Intermediate School District, Highfields Incorporated, Peckham Incorporated, our county commissioners, and with the support of our juvenile justice millage, our big, bold idea came to life. Today, our Ingham County Family Center is a shining example of the deliverable we as a state can produce with the direction and vision through the executive order mandated by Governor Gretchen Whitmer. As a former prosecutor and now seated judge, I know the importance of a strong partnership between our local courts and the state of Michigan in order to address juvenile justice reform. With Governor Whitmer and Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist's vision, leadership, and dedication, we will continue to enhance and further build on best practices so every child in every community who enters the juvenile justice system will have every opportunity to be successful. Tomorrow's leaders are today's youth, and today we've invested in tomorrow. Thank you, Governor Whitmer and Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, for your vision, leadership, dedication to our youth across this state. And now, Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Judge. Thank you. Thank you, Judge McCormick. I am so, sorry, there you go. I'm really glad to be here with the Lieutenant Governor, who has taken on so many important issues on behalf of the administration and the people of Michigan, and I'm excited about this announcement today. I'm sorry the Attorney General wasn't able to join us, but she intended to be here. I'm awfully glad to have Justice Clement with us, Representative Whitmer, Senator Santana, and Jason Smith, the Executive Director of the Michigan Center for Youth Justice. Today, I am proud to be able to take action to improve our justice system and make Michigan a safer, more equitable place for people of all ages. Under the executive order that I am proud to be signing today, we are establishing the Bipartisan Task Force on Juvenile Justice Reform. The work of this task force is unprecedented in Michigan and will include members of law enforcement and the advocacy community, as well as juvenile defense experts and government officials. We have a lot of work to do to address juvenile justice in Michigan. It starts with taking an honest look and an honest assessment of where we are. The state of Michigan still detains youth at one of the highest rates in the nation and still detains youth for non-criminal behavior. This has to change. We need to start focusing on uplifting our young Michiganders and treat them with dignity and respect, and first and foremost, recognize that they are children. We cannot allow an early mistake to define the rest of a child's life, especially if it's a nonviolent offense. With today's executive order, we are kicking off a comprehensive, data-driven review of Michigan's juvenile justice system. Our goal is to improve outcomes for youth while enhancing public safety and aligning our state policies and practices with what we know works. Now, the task force that we are forming will review and build on a lot of efforts that are already underway in counties across our state. Several other states and some counties right here in Michigan have significantly decreased juvenile incarceration and arrest rates, but are struggling to reduce recidivism and allocate resources more effectively. On a more granular level, the task force will analyze case-level state and local data, examine state policies, and convene focus groups and interviews with key stakeholders. That last piece is really important. We're having conversations with the people who are most affected by our current policies. It's how we learn and how we make sure we have a better policy going forward. These steps are going to shed light on the system, how it currently runs, and where there are opportunities to improve it and overcome the challenges that remain. Our review will build on statewide reforms that have already been implemented and supplemental successful local efforts. Criminal justice reform has been a day one priority for me and my administration. Last week, I was in Genesee County at the first expungement fair since I signed the clean slate legislation. Over 1,000 people showed up before we even started at 9 a.m. It was an incredible effort. The Attorney General was a big part of it. The Secretary of State was helping to register people to vote, and we were operating a vaccination clinic as well. This is an opportunity that was afforded to so many people in our state because of the bipartisan clean slate legislation, which I signed last year. We also created the bipartisan Michigan Task Force on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration that was chaired by our Lieutenant Governor and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Bridget McCormick. The task force reviewed our jail and court data to expand alternatives to jail, safely reduce jail admissions and lengths of stay, and improve the effectiveness on the front end of our justice system. I signed bipartisan bills reforming civil asset forfeiture, limiting in some cases and ending the ability of law enforcement agencies to seize a person's property before that person has been judged and convicted. In January, I signed bipartisan package of bills reforming sentencing guidelines and law enforcement practices to reduce jail time, increase the use of tickets instead of arrests that lead to incarceration, and reduce the set of offenses that lead to a suspended driver's license or other such things. Additionally, I signed Raise the Age into Law, which was a bill package that increased the age of who is legally considered a juvenile or an adult in the criminal justice system, and we moved it from 17 to 18 years old. This is just one element of the juvenile justice system that we need to continue improving upon. There are other packages being discussed, and I am eager to continue our work with the legislature to get it done for the people of our state. So the actions today have real potential to improve the futures for so many people in our state. A single mistake early on in life should not negatively impact the rest of your life. For too many young people in our state, it does right now. So we're going to change that dynamic. We're going to bring together the best practices, the best expertise and knowledge as we do that. I can't wait to see what the task force's recommendations are, and I am eager to work with everyone in this space to make sure we've got a system that truly is just. And with that, I'm going to sign the order, and then the Lieutenant Governor will speak next. Great, it is so. Lieutenant Governor, please.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Governor, thank you so much for your leadership on this issue. I am proud to work alongside you and so many others here in the state of Michigan to reform our justice system overall, and today to begin a focus on really approaching our juvenile justice system with an opportunity to improve that as well. I'm proud to chair this task force that has just been signed by executive action. I want to thank Judge Lisa McCormick from the 30th Judicial Circuit Court. I want to also thank Justice Clement. We're looking forward to work with her on this as well. We have acknowledged the Attorney General. She has and always will be a fighter for these issues. And we have bipartisan representation here from the Michigan Legislature. We have Senator Sylvia Santana as well as Representative Whitmer. And Jason, I want to thank you for hosting us here at this center that provides services for young people to position them for success. You know, Michigan has been a national leader in reforming many aspects of our criminal legal system since Governor Whitmer and I took office. And today we launched this effort to continue building and developing fundamental criminal justice system reforms for Michigan's young people who have come into contact with our criminal legal system. One mistake must not define a child's life. We must have systems in place that educate and support our children, especially when they make mistakes, when they're facing traumatic circumstances or come into contact with our legal system. Last summer, many of us heard the story of a girl who was called Grace, a young Michigander who was incarcerated during the COVID-19 pandemic after a judge ruled that not completing her schoolwork was a violation of her probation. Grace was only 15 years old. She was incarcerated last May, again, for not completing online coursework when her Beverly Hills High School switched to fully remote learning. Grace's situation was a complete and systemic failure of our juvenile justice system. Grace deserved better. Her family, her school, her classmates, her community deserved better too. The circumstances were challenging, and yes, they were complex, but Grace and her mother, they deserve resources that should have wrapped around them and supported them rather than putting this little girl away. Simply put, incarceration was the wrong response. Frankly, incarceration many times is going to be the wrong response when dealing with a child. Care is the right response. You see, we have to reduce people's contact with the criminal justice system in the first place. We have to provide resources to support victims and survivors and their families. We have to treat people, young and old, with dignity, with respect and humanity when they are in contact with the system. And then most importantly, we must position people for success when they are done with that system. Hopefully, this sort of effort will lead to people never interacting with the system again. Now, this isn't the first time that I've sought solutions for the juvenile justice system's failures. So in fact, in October 2019, on my first international trip to Europe as Lieutenant Governor, I co-led a bipartisan group of my fellow lieutenant governors to a youth correctional facility in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. And the key takeaway from my colleagues and I in this facility was that it prioritized care as its purpose alongside pathways to accountability. And it worked. Their recidivism rate, which is the challenge that we have to solve, was and remains minuscule. We must learn from the best and apply the best practices in smart ways here in Michigan and be willing to go anywhere to find out what those best practices are. I do want to acknowledge that we have already started making significant improvements to our juvenile justice system in recent years, which is serving as a foundation for our continued efforts at reform. They include the adoption of state pays first legislation. And we've seen, as the governor referred to, the bipartisan state legislative action to raise the age for automatic adult adjudication, as well as the many efforts happening at the county level to improve outcomes for young people in the juvenile justice system. So today the governor's created this bipartisan task force on juvenile justice reform, and this is the first of its kind in Michigan, and it will center on youth voices and lived experiences. This will feature presentations from counties and all three branches of government, as well as law enforcement and the juvenile defense and advocacy community, and critically, formerly justice-involved youth. This task force will compete in in-depth analysis of our juvenile justice system. We recognize that the system has shortcomings and that there are pitfalls. But to improve juvenile justice outcomes, jurisdictions need to take a real, honest, and clear look at their system's performance. So today we start toward improving the lives of young Michiganders who deserve systems that move beyond mere punishment and toward positioning them for success. A second chance at a prosperous future. Again, one mistake must not define a child for the rest of their lives. This task force is going to recommend proven tactics and strategies and practices for reform that are grounded in data, facts, research, science, and fundamentally constitutional principles. We expect to see a final report detailing the findings and policy recommendations by July 22nd of 2022. And additionally, we're going to work on educating the public and stakeholders and policymakers regarding the findings and looking for their input and engagement on the recommendations. So while we celebrate the progress that is marked and taking place today, I do want to acknowledge that we must continue to do the work that needs to be done around criminal justice reform at every level. I was honored to co-chair the Michigan Joint Task Force on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration with Chief Justice McCormick. We reviewed the state's jail and court data and made recommendations to improve effectiveness on the front end of the justice system. And in January, the governor signed a package of bipartisan bills reforming sentencing guidelines, police officer practices to reduce jail times, increase the use of tickets instead of arrests that lead to incarceration, and reduce the set of offenses that lead to suspended driver's licenses, and much more. We know there's more work to be done, but inspired by that bipartisan momentum, that work continues in a substantive and concrete way today. As a parent, I want to make sure that we're fighting for every single child in this state, regardless of their past history. Today, we are initiating a process that will fix the system that failed Grace and so many others. Today, we start making changes for the better for young people across the state of Michigan. And so thank you for being here to mark this, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you to make it happen. And so with that, I now will turn the podium over to Supreme Court Justice Clement.
Well, thank you to the governor and lieutenant governor for the invitation to join you for this important announcement and for the opportunity to serve on this task force. Step by step, Michigan has been addressing problems that have plagued our justice system for years. Each step along the way has been bipartisan, built on partnerships, and driven by data. This task force will be successful because the governor has adopted that same model and because everyone here and partners statewide are committed to reimagining a juvenile justice system that is more collaborative, evidence-based, focused on best practices, and ready to help every youth achieve success. If you walk away from this press conference remembering two words, remember these: data and collaboration. Data was critical to the success of the Jail and Pretrial Task Force because we can't solve a problem if we don't measure it first. And if we don't measure it, we won't know if our solutions were successful. That means the critical first step for this task force is getting our arms around the data, figuring out what we have and what we need to collect. That data will drive solutions and make sure all the partners in the system are accountable. Collaboration. There is nothing more important than working together as partners. This includes traditional justice system partners and increasing involvement of service providers from education, health, mental health, and the other disciplines who are charged with serving our youth. We cannot accomplish our goals without working with our local partners. By working together, we can eliminate juvenile justice, keep kids out of detention, and shut down the school to prison pipeline. Our first focus must be on keeping kids out of the system. Working together, we can rehabilitate young offenders and connect them with the right services to address their specific needs. Working together, we can make sure that the rights of every child are protected and that families and children in crisis get the legal representation they need to get their lives back on track. I have visited family courts all across Michigan, and I see the passion and purpose of judges, court staff, and support professionals who are doing all of these things. But we know that kids are still falling through the cracks. We know we can do better, and Michigan's judiciary is ready to work with this task force so that we can reimagine our juvenile justice system and make a positive difference in the lives of more youth and families. And at this time, I get to introduce one of two of our tremendous legislative partners and champions, Representative Whitmer. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here today to help announce the creation of the Juvenile Justice Task Force. I've been involved with the justice system for a little over a decade in my professional career. As a paralegal, for over 11 years, I witnessed the challenges that kids and families went through while trying to navigate the justice system. And often the kids get stuck in the revolving door of the system because of financial barriers and access to legal counsel. As an appointee to the Criminal Justice Policy Commission under Governor Snyder and a member of the Justice Committee for Council of State Governments, I've made numerous contacts and have built relationships over the years with many stakeholders in the justice arena. Because of those relationships, I've been able to collaborate with stakeholders as well as Chief Justice McCormick and Justice Clement to move Michigan in the right direction when it comes to smart, sensible juvenile justice reform. Some current legislation I've sponsored in this area is House Bill 4620 and 4174, which establishes standards for the juvenile indigent defense system, and also a juvenile unified data collection system. So I was glad the Justice mentioned the data collection. In that, we must make sure that our kids are afforded the due process in their legal proceedings and that they understand the consequences of their actions. Being a state that has a high rate of detention for our youth, we have to make smart investments in our justice system and collaborate with our community partners to get kids on the right track so they can overcome their challenges and be productive, successful members of society. That's why I look forward to collaborating with this task force and in moving Michigan to the top when it comes to leading the nation in juvenile justice policies. Thank you. With that, Senator Santana from the 3rd District.
Good afternoon, everyone. Governor Whitmer and Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. I also want to take the opportunity to acknowledge one of my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Roger Victory, who is here with us today as well, who is a champion for this work also. Thank you for having me here today. The announcement of a new bipartisan task force on juvenile justice reform is a great news for communities across the state of Michigan. This is a continuation of work that many prior to myself, as well as other legislators in the Michigan legislature, and I am very proud to be here to represent the Senate Democrats in this effort as well. Michigan's children, especially Black and brown children, have historically been subjected to the juvenile justice system that penalizes and punishes them when they really need is instead a support system that puts them in a better path to their futures. We all have seen the effects on tough on crime legislation and policies and campaigns that simply do not work. Not only is it costly, but it also does not rehabilitate those individuals. Taking the same approach to the juvenile justice system is even more costly, but also both literally as well as morally. It doesn't help our community stay safe. Instead, we tear at their moral fabrics and leaving children without the support and resources necessary to turn their mistakes into lessons worth learning from. We owe it to them and the future generations of Michiganders to work towards the end to the school to prison pipeline, which has unnecessarily kept many children of color down. Michigan has made great strides in the last few years at creating a more equitable criminal justice system, including raise the age. I am so hopeful with this partnership today, that it's an important step to protecting our young residents in the state and also making sure that opportunity and supports that are there for their needed success. I look forward to getting to work on improving Michigan's juvenile justice system so that we can better the lives and impact those and strengthen families as well in the process. This is a much important issue, and our investment now will pay off in terms of long-term benefits for all of us for decades to come. I am humble and grateful for the opportunity to serve the people of the great state of Michigan to transform the lives through this new task force that will remind us that children need to be treated like children, and they need to have the care. Our communities will be better because of this effort that we're making today, and we should all look forward to the changes that will arise from it. Thank you. And now Jason will come to the stage, Jason Smith from MCCD.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Smith, and I am the Executive Director of the Michigan Center for Youth Justice, or MCYJ for short. We actually changed our name last year. That's all right. We are a nonprofit organization that advocates statewide for a fair and effective justice system for Michigan's youth. I first want to thank Governor Whitmer for your continued leadership on the issue of youth justice. Establishing the Juvenile Justice Task Force follows your signing into law legislation that increases confidentiality protections for juvenile records earlier this year, and of course, as others have mentioned, signing the Raise the Age legislation into law. These reform efforts show a clear understanding that kids who get into trouble are still kids and must be treated in an age and developmentally appropriate manner whenever they come in contact with the justice system. I also want to thank all of the state, judicial, legislative, and local partners who have committed themselves to this important work. I'm glad to see that so many people, so many stakeholders recognize that the time is right to embark on this once-in-a-generation opportunity to build upon the recent reforms and address a series of tragedies that have recently occurred in connection to the youth justice system in Michigan. I appreciate that the task force will take a broad and comprehensive look at the state's juvenile justice system, including its use of out-of-home placements and alternatives to detention, ways to improve statewide juvenile justice system data, while also exploring opportunities to reduce racial, ethnic, and geographic disparities. The most successful juvenile justice systems take every opportunity to keep kids out of the formal system as much as possible and in their communities, and that requires strong collaboration at the state and local level. MCYJ will do all that we can to support the goals of the JJ Task Force. Michigan's kids can't wait any longer for these improvements to the juvenile justice system, and so again, I am so pleased that our state is taking the important step forward that, if successful, can make Michigan's JJ system a model for the country. Thank you. And with that, I'll bring the governor back up.
All right, thank you. All right, we are able to take a couple questions. We would open it up to you guys.
Governor, in a short time, people who are catastrophically injured in their lives are going to gather on the Capitol to ask for a fix to the bill you signed that they say is going to leave them without care, even evicted and dropped off at hospitals if they're on ventilators. Are you calling on the legislature to change that bill, fix it, or is it what you intended it to be?
I had a number of conversations with the legislative leaders and made very clear that I would be very interested in seeing a narrow fix to addressing the reimbursement rates. And I've been clear that that's something I would be eager to sign when it hits my desk. And so beyond that, I know that this is a very scary moment for some people, and I'm hopeful that we can find a resolution here that will address some of this.
Governor, what's your position on providing relief to businesses that couldn't pay their property taxes last year for COVID? And do you believe that businesses that were fined under executive orders later deemed unconstitutional should be forgiven?
So we've got a lot of conversation going on with the legislature right now about ways that we can improve on, I think, some of the policies that forced certain actions over the last year. One of the things that I am very interested in is giving business some relief, helping people. I'd love to get those federal dollars deployed as quickly as possible. That's another aspect to turbocharging our economic jumpstart. But I do think that there is a lot of potential on that front that you just cited.
And what about the fines from last year under unconstitutional executive orders? Should those be forgiven?
That's something that I'll continue to talk with the state treasurer and our legal counsel about before I weigh in publicly, but that's something I know that is part of the conversation as well.
Governor,
Governor, on the executive order, what do you expect that this process will yield that somehow different than the process that came up with Raise the Age and things like that?
Well, it's a different subject matter and it requires a different expertise, and I'm going to actually ask the Lieutenant Governor to come up and share a little bit about having been involved in both. I think he can shed some light on why this is unique and why this is the right next step on this front.
Sure, thanks, Governor. So, Rick, I think the big difference here is in scope. So this is intended to be a comprehensive look. And the inspiration for this is building on the foundation, again, that bipartisan Raise the Age package had, but the bipartisan jail and pretrial incarceration task force, I think, is the right model. We took a comprehensive approach to looking at basically every aspect of the process for which a person comes into contact with the system, looking at policing and arrest versus citations, looking at sentencing guidelines, looking at probation, looking at all these different pieces of it. And this is going to take a similar approach, looking at the entire sort of life cycle of somebody's experience with the system. And that's going to present a lot of opportunities, and that's why we need to have so many different stakeholders at the table. So I'm proud that we have legislators like, again, Senator Santana, Representative Whitmer, Senator Victory, Representative Yancey, all these folks who have different angles on understanding of the system, and then combining those with the experts and those who've been in contact with the system. We're going to learn a lot of different things. And so I expect this to be a very broad set of recommendations that has the chance to really fundamentally transform the system.
Do you see this as a reversal from what the state adopted in the 1990s?
I think it's an opportunity for evolution. There were some choices that were made in the 90s on policing and on criminal justice that we've seen some pretty negative impacts in terms of the over-incarceration of people that has particularly fallen on the Black community in Michigan and around the country, on communities of color, but also, as we noticed in the Jail and Pretrial Incarceration Task Force, like over-incarceration in jails has been a problem in every part of the state of Michigan. In fact, in our rural communities, our jail populations were growing faster than our urban communities. And I suspect that we'll see similar challenges with our juvenile justice system as well. And so we need to, again, we're taking a comprehensive approach looking here because we think this is going to benefit all geographies and all communities across Michigan.
We can take a couple more questions.
Governor, there's a package of bills going through the legislature that the law enforcement community says could change the state's good time law by reducing sentences. Are you aware of that? And secondly, do you share those concerns?
You know what, I know that there are a lot of bills in early phases moving through the legislature. They change dramatically, so I do not pretend to be well versed in precisely what the current iteration is, but that's something that, you know, we will watch the debate and see if there are improvements to be made. And can someone show Tim Skubic how to turn his phone, the ringer off? You're 2 for 2 in the last 2 weeks, Skubic. All right, go ahead.
As you and others have noted today, the problems with the juvenile justice system are not necessarily new, and people have known about them for a long time. Why should families who are affected by this trust that a task force that's not supposed to be done for another year will actually affect any reasonable and meaningful change?
Well, we've seen reasonable and meaningful change in task forces that we have done over the last couple of years. I mean, this is a moment where we have the benefit of a lot of experience and expertise. We want to make sure that as we make changes that they are well informed and that they are reflective of our values of ensuring that we are not penalizing a young person for the rest of their life for making one bad choice. That we've got a system that actually is rehabilitative, and I had the opportunity to chat with 2 young women who came through this phenomenal opportunity here in Ingham County, and they are great, productive citizens. It's inspiring stories, and both of whom are thinking about going to nursing school, and so that's something that I think is remarkable. And you know, I'm not gonna out them here, but they are among us, and they are very inspiring young women.
On the insurance. With the auto insurance, there seems to be one loophole possible in that it lowers rates, but it doesn't regulate rates for new companies. Can companies providing care simply go out of business temporarily, reincorporate, and then be able to provide care as before?
I know that that is something that DIFS has been working through. I do not believe that that is permitted under the law, and I think that was the conclusion that they drew. But if you'd like more in depth on that, we can put you in touch with the department and the director. We can take one more question.
Governor, on this committee, the past criminal justice reform committee, they use Pew Research Center to gather a lot of the data. What kind of mechanisms are they going to use this time around? Was there data gathered then that could be used now?
Again, I'm going to ask the LG to come on up and expound on that.
Sure, thank you, Governor. So our partner in the Jail and Pretrial Incarceration Task Force was Pew Research and Pew Charitable Trust, and they were a tremendous partner that really made sure that we had both the data collection and technical capabilities to be able to make well-informed recommendations. And in this case, we'll be partnering with the Council of State Governments, who's going to be providing that same kind of engine for research, for technical assistance, for staffing support. And again, all the people who are participating in the task force will have, again, representatives from the legislature, representatives from the judicial branch, the Supreme Court administrative office, and we'll also have other partners who have a lot of things to bring to the table. So I think that experience, again, that's our model here. And to the question on, sort of why should people trust this task force? This administration has treated task forces very differently than I think previous elected officials have treated task forces. Just look at the jail and pretrial incarceration task force, which resulted in reforms that transformed Michigan from a laggard to a leader in many aspects of the jail reform process. You look at the Michigan Coronavirus Task Force on Racial Disparities. That task force got to work immediately and it saved lives of people of color across the state of Michigan and impacted how we administered equitable health taxes. So I think this is a continuation of that approach toward task forces that are biased towards action, and I think we're going to see this bear fruit for this juvenile justice system that desperately needs reform.
Thank you, and with that, I want to thank all of our speakers for being here today, and that concludes the press conference.
Okay, all right, go right up. Bye.